or is the Internet country code for Australia. History: the domain name was originally allocated by John Postal, operator of IANA, to Kevin Robert Tilts of Melbourne University in 1986. After an approximately 5-year process in the 1990s, the Internet industry created a self-regulatory body called or Domain Administration to operate the domain. It obtained assent from ICANN in 2001, and commenced operating a new competitive regime for domain registration on July 1, 2002. Since this new regime, any registration has to be ordered via a registrar. Operation, oversight of OR is by OR Domain Administration. It is a not-for-profit organization whose membership is derived from Internet organizations, industry members and interested individuals. The organisation operates under the consent of the Australian government, which has legislative power to decide the operators of electronic addressing in the country. Policy for OR is devised by policy development panels. These panels are convened by ORDA and combine public input with industry representation to derive policy. The day-to-day operation of the OR registry technical facility is tendered out by ORDA. The operator from 2002 to 2006 for many of OR's second-level domains is a U.S. registry. The registry does not sell direct to the consumer, who must register and maintain their domain name via a domain name registrar. After the industry's liberalization in 2002, there is an active competitive markets in registrars with a variety of prices and services. In 2008, ORDA changed its long-standing policy and allowed changes in ownership of OR domains. Although the secondary market was initially slow to take off, there have recently been signs of increasing maturity in the OR aftermarket, culminating in a record $125,500 sale of investmentproperty.com.au. The ORDA ISS is a world-first industry initiative aimed at improving the security of OR registrar businesses, protecting OR registrants and enhancing the overall stability and integrity of the OR domain space. ORDA introduced the ISS in October 2013 as a mandatory requirement, and all accredited registrars must be certified as ISS compliant within 24 months. Discount domain name services, cheaper domains and information brokers, part of the Total Internet Group, are the first 3 ORDA accredited registrars to achieve ISS compliance. Registration: it is no longer possible to register directly in the second level of OR. The naming rules for OR require registrations under second-level categories that describe a type of entity. OR, for example, is designed for commercial entities. This follows a similar allocation policy to that formerly used in other countries such as the United Kingdom and New Zealand. Second-level domains .com or a Euro commercial entities, .net or a Euro commercial entities, org or a Euro associations and non-profit organizations, edu or a Euro educational institutions, gov or a Euro governments and their departments, ASN or a Euro associations and non-profit organizations, IT or a Euro individuals, XIRO or a Euro CSIRO. Community geographic domain names introduced in 2004. Community geographic domain names are intended to be used for community websites that reflect community interests such as local business, tourism, historical information, culture, sporting groups, local events and news of a local community. These domains are managed by the OR Community Domains Trust on behalf of ORDA. The funding of OR CD was provided from a ballot of locality names in the .com or and .net or domain spaces. Previously, any locality with a postcode had been restricted from being registered as a commercial domain name. CGDNs use the state or territory's common abbreviation as the second level of the domain. For example, a community based in Victoria would receive a domain ending in Vic or, a Northern Territory community would use NT or, and so on. The third level of the domain must be an addressable locality within that state or territory, of the form town name Vic or. Where a name is duplicated within a state or Euro, for instance, between a smaller town and a suburb of a larger town or city a Euro, the locality name may be suffixed with the name of the local government area, town or city to which it is associated. Holders of CGDNs must be a legally registered, not-for-profit entity. And representative of the local community for the purpose of holding the domain name license. In particular, commercial entities and local governments are not permitted to hold a CGDN in their own right. They are however permitted to hold membership in such entities set up to hold a CGDN. As of November 2009, the ORCD site claims 91 active CGDNs across Australia, with a further 115 either approved or awaiting approval. In addition, a number of temporary CGDN sites were activated for communities affected by the Victorian Black Saturday bushfires of February 2009, run either by community members, or ORCD itself. These domains are due to expire at the end of June 2010, unless transferred to an eligible holder. Third-level domains the use of gov as a second-level domain is for Australian federal government and for its initiatives, while the use of a third-level domain, being an Australian state, is an identifier that the domain belongs to the relevant state government. The EDU is also split up into state-based categories in most cases. ORDA has delegated responsibility of the EDU domain to Australian Information and Communications Technology and Education Committee, which formed a specialist subcommittee, EDU Domain Administration Committee. Schools use a domain name that reflects their locale, and these state-based third-level domains are managed independently by the states. For example, a school in Western Australia would register schoolname.wa.edu.au. Similarly, replacing the bold part of these domains, Victoria would use Vic, Queensland would use QLD, South Australia would use ZAR, Tasmania would use TAS, Northern Territory would use NT and the Australian Capital Territory would use ACT. However, after a change of Internet services in Queensland state schools, their domain names were changed from schoolname.qld.edu.au to schoolname.eq.edu.au. This is not the case for private schools in Queensland. Often, domains can even contain a fourth level. For instance, a NSW public school might have the domain schoolnameschoolsnsw.edu.au. Tertiary institutions are typically exempt from requiring state-based distinctions. For example, Edith Cowan University in Western Australia has a domain of aq.edu.au rather than aq.wa.edu, or Monash University in Victoria uses monash.edu.au rather than monash.vic.edu.au. This difference can be associated with states having responsibility for primary and secondary education while the Commonwealth has responsibility for tertiary education. Tertiary institutions often having a presence in multiple states. Historic second-level domains some second-level domain names are no longer actively used. Whilst registrations are grandfathered for some, no new registrations are accepted. Archie or Euro, host of the Archie Information Service of the early 1990s, has since been deleted. Con4 a Euro conferences and other short-lived events, now only exists for Linux Con4, GW or a Euro gateways and miscellaneous ARNet routing equipment. Has since been deleted. Info or a Euro general information, OTC or Euro a mapping domain for X400 addresses. Was obsoleted by Telemimo or has since been deleted. Oz or a Euro historical domain name for Australian sites. Australia's original top-level domain for use in the store and forward Internet messaging system MHSNET was Oz. The top-level domain later officially became OR, and those domains in Oz were moved to Oz or. As of April 2011, many subdomains under CSMU Oz or and EAMU Oz or were still in use within the CSSE and EEE departments of the University of Melbourne. Telemimo or a Euro a mapping domain for X400 addresses has since been deleted. Other Australian domain names. OR is not the only top-level domain name assigned to Australia. Some Australian territories have their own ISO 3166-1 Alpha 2 code, and therefore have their own CCTLD as well. CC a Euro Cocos Islands, CX a Euro Christmas Island, ANF a Euro Norfolk Island, HM a Euro Heard and McDonald Islands. They are also two geographic top-level domain names assigned to Australia and which are used by individuals and businesses within a particular region. They are, Melbourne a Euro for Victorian registered businesses, entities associated with the state of Victoria or Australian citizens and residents with a Victorian address, Sydney for New South Wales registered businesses, entities associated with the state of New South Wales or Australian citizens and residents with a New South Wales address. As the appropriate authorities were late in recognising the need to manage these, most were registered by entrepreneurs for use as vanity domains unrelated to the locale they serve. CC, for example, is now operated by VeriSign. HM represents a nature preserve with no human inhabitants. References. External links: IANAWHOIS for or DAR, AUS Registry, list of registrars accredited by AUS Registry, Australian Domainer Forum, Australian Domainers Community, .com.au, .net.au, org.au domains by IP address.